Hello everybody, I'm Roxy, this is Chaotic Bibliophile, and today I finally bring you my Springathon wrap-up. 2 months later. Well, you know me, you know this channel, you know life, so let's get right into it. In case you don't know what Springathon is, I'm going to leave my possibility pile video down below, which was very good because it did work as a possibility pile. I did read books from there. I also started some books that I haven't yet finished 2 months later. No excuse for myself. I didn't participate as much as I wanted to. May was definitely a crazy month, but in a good way. Like, I feel April was just plain bad. It was chaos, utter madness. But then May was sort of picking up the pieces from April and getting back into the game, whatever the game is. So yeah, I'm very happy with my reads. I didn't end up joining for the photo challenges, but I enjoyed seeing everyone's photo challenges. And anyways, all the information is linked in my possibility pile video. So in case you want more information, and I explain it more there, but I also link to the hosts' channels there. So all that information in the video linked down below and in the eye as always. So there were 5 challenges. There's like 1 main challenge and then 4 bonus challenges, and I am very proud to say I completed them all. The main challenge is to read 1 non-fiction nature writing book. And for this, I read The Best American Science and Nature Writing 2020. I am now officially following this series year after year. I think it was 2019 that I made the decision to explicitly follow this every single year, because 2 years in a row, the guest editors have been people that I follow and like beyond the series. Before, it was more like whichever edition I could get my hands on. These anthologies combine science and nature writing. Of course, it really depends on who the editor is, whether they are more nature science oriented. I'm not going to lie, usually my favorites have to do with science. I think because a lot of nature writing pieces have to do with ecology, and it's not that I don't want to read anything about ecology, but it's not something that, tickles my bones in the same way that, for example, everything about metadata and drug trials and experiments and cognitive stuff, all of that, yes, give it all to me. So I think that's why. The 2020 edition was edited by Michio Kaku, who is a physicist and a very popular physics books writer. I did enjoy a lot of pieces here. I think the selection was really good. The introduction also by Michio Kaku and the introduction by Jamie Green, who is the general series editor, were very good. I loved both. In case you don't know how this works, it's basically there is a series editor, which is Jamie Green. She's awesome. And they have a guest editor. And so Jamie Green calls, I think, around 100 or 150 pieces from a variety of outlets, and then Michio Kaku reads them and selects the ones he wants to include. So in case you're interested, I am going to name some of my favorites. Sleep No More by Kelly Clancy was really good. The Tumultuous History of a Mysterious Brain Signal That Questioned Free Will by Bahar Gholipur was very good. Younger Longer by Adam Gopnik. Right Under Our Noses by Sarah Harrison. I, Language Robot by Patrick House was so good. Beauty of the Beasts by Ferris Jabber. Intelligent Ways to Search for Extraterrestrials by Adam Mann. Total Eclipse by Diana Somo Makul, which, great name. Vaccines Reimagined by Melinda Venner Moyer. New Blood by Siddhartha Mukherjee. He's the author of The Gene and The Emperor of Maladies, and I want to read both those books so bad. Actually, one of them I have on hold at the library. The Day the Dinosaurs Died by Douglas Preston, who wrote a very famous book on dinosaurs that I now want to read. The Final 5% by Tim Brookworth. The Next Word by John Seabrook. Different Kind of Theory of Everything by Natalie Volkover, and The Brain That Remade Itself by Andrew Zaleski. Those were my favorites, but all of them were good. I don't think any piece stood out to me as being boring or bad, which sometimes happens with these anthologies, but in this case, I just like them all, but those were my favorites. I hope you didn't mind that I read them. I just list them because they have been published in outlets such as The New Yorker or science magazine. They may be paywalled, but you know, if you have subscriptions, maybe. If not, pick this up. It's so good. If you want to try both science and nature writing and you don't know where to begin, I think this is great because at the end they provide a small bio of all the contributors, and so you can seek them out if you like their style. And I have done that in the past. However, I would pay attention to the guest editor. As I said, if it's a scientist that is more related to physics or mathematics or even medicine, sometimes the collections kind of skew more towards technology and science or like research versus more nature writing, which, you know, some nature writings, as Cy Montgomery, who edited the 2019 collection, chose a lot more strong nature writing pieces. And actually one of the pieces I remember most vividly from that collection is a nature writing piece. But I seriously encourage you to pick these up. Really enjoyed this. I'm so happy I got to it. The next prompts were one-word prompts and were pairs of words, and you could choose one for each prompt. And the first one was migration or home. And for that, I read The Next Migration by Sonia Shah. I already reviewed this book in my Booker Round 2 roundup, link down below and in the eye as always. I did not like this. I loved it at first. Like the first 30 pages had me so bad. This is all about human migration and trying to make the case for human migration being basically a biological trait or like the norm, not the exception. And although I do agree with a lot of her arguments, I think the demonstration of the arguments, not even the arguments, the way the central point or like the main thesis of the book was argued, it was just poor, sloppy reasoning. It's not the science itself, because of course I cannot critique the science. She's a biologist, I am not. All the studies in animals, they sound fine to me, but the way she linked those to humans and the way she really cherry-picked her examples, it was just very sloppy and I didn't like it. If you want to hear more of my thoughts, you can check out that video. Moving on to happier things. For the second prompt, bloom or decay, I chose Life in the Garden by Penelope Lively. I did read this. See, I do read some things that I say I'm going to read sometimes. This is sold as a memoir of writer Penelope Lively on her gardening, but it's not that. There are memoir aspects and she talks about gardening, you know, herself, but it's not that. This is best described as a series of essays. Literary, not academic per se. They're not like MLA formatted with citations and stuff, but it's up there. Like, I think she could have read these lectures and it wouldn't have felt out of place. That's all I'm saying. This is not a critique, it's just, it's different from what I expected, which is why I started it, loved it, but had to pause it, and then I had to come back to it when I was in that mind space to absorb literary criticism. She looks here at different authors and how they gardened, but also how they incorporated gardening into their stories and what that means, the different symbols that gardening and gardens can have and plants can have. She also goes into history and she looks at like Roman gardens and what they signified socially and individually. So you see, it's a very dense little book. It's amazing. Again, it's really good. I think one of my biggest surprises, and I should have included this in the mid-year freakout tag, but I didn't, it has been also Penelope Lively. A great book. It made me want to pick up more theory, and it's also just gorgeous. It's like really nice to study because of the format. It's not like super floppy, but it does have some flop, and the spacing and the margin. So it's like a good book to study, which I think is good since it does talk so much about things like reality and metaphor, the written garden, time, order, and the garden, style, and the garden. So you see, she weaves together the physicality of the garden with the metaphoric implications and uses the garden has had. If that sounds like your thing, pick this up. But if you were expecting a memoir with some literary aspects thrown in, but mostly a memoir, or maybe her linking herself to authors in the past, this is really not that. It's much closer, I would say, to a literary essay that you would study in university. Then number 3 was Forage or Hibernate, and for that I ended up reading Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. This is translated from the Japanese to Spanish by Juan Forn. But of course, I will list the English translation down below as well. I always do that. If you've seen my from 1900s to 1950s wrap-up video, you know I didn't get on with this. However, for this prompt on hibernation, I think it was actually perfect because in a way what Shimamaru is doing, going to this snow country, is to hibernate from his depressing real life in Tokyo. Also, the descriptions of the landscape were definitely the best part of the book. I really loved the landscapes when there were no people and it was just Shimamaru, but not even really Shimamaru, just this omniscient narrator describing the sensations and the landscape. That was gorgeous. It's the only reason I would consider reading Kawabata in the future, which is not something that I'm planning to do in the near future, but you know, it's always a possibility. If you want to hear all my thoughts that are still very scrambled in that video, but I talk a bit more about all the things that I disliked in that video that is linked down below and in the eye as always. The thing is, can that aspect savage the rest of the book? And I just don't think so, but at the same time, I haven't gotten rid of this. I still have it because some part of me would like to revisit it. I don't know. I'm still digesting this book. It made me very angry, but the landscape was really good. I don't know. I just don't know with this book, guys. But yeah, it was a good pick for the hibernate prompt. And then for the last one, Buzz versus Stillness, I chose The Bees by Carol and Duffy. I know it's a bit of a predictable choice because, you know, bees buzzing, but I am so happy I picked this up. Funny story, I bought this at a bookstore in Bath. Yes, it has that sticker, there's nothing to do there. But after I bought it, I was kind of dissatisfied. I don't know why, don't ask me why. I was like, will I ever get to this? Because I'm not a bee person. I don't love bees. When I was a kid, I definitely hated them. I am now on friendly terms. So I was a bit mad about this book and I didn't pick it up for years. So I think I bought this like 3 years ago. It took me so long to read it because of these reasons. But I love this. I was so wrong. Roxana of the past was smart because she got this, and she was dumb because she didn't want to read it. But also I'm happy that I read it now because I think my poetry reading skills have definitely sharpened since I had my poetry course in uni and then I was a TA for that course. Caroline Duffy is one of those poets that defines her own poetry so well. She has this quote, "I am interested in simple words but used in complicated ways." And I love big words and I cannot lie, but I also love her mission statement, especially because she does it so well. Her craft is so on point. And in this collection, of course, she talks about bees, but she also talks about the present. It's a very present collection. Like, she has some allusions to actual recent history issues that have happened. She also talks a lot about literature in itself. And I think that's one of the aspects where the bee metaphor operates more successfully, is when she talks about the craft of writing. She also weaves in a lot of history, not as much as in feminine gospels, but she still does it. And it's that thing where, you know, you're just enjoying the poem and the imagery, and then you say, oh, she was talking about that. It's also just like a beautiful book. It has the bookmark, really cool lines. I just think she's so smart and she's so playful, and you can tell she loves language and literature. I think this is just a perfect choice for people who are starting to get into poetry but still want poetry that feels like poetry, still want the rhyme schemes and the metrics and interesting things with metaphors and similes and imagery. I just love Carol and Duffy so much. And finally, this is a different book. It's not technically to writing, but I wanted to be cheeky and include it in this wrap up, and it's A Natural History of Piano by Stuart Isacoff. This little beauty here that I ordered secondhand from Better World Books. This was such a joy. It's about pianists, of course. So the subtitle for this is The Instrument, the Music, the Musicians, from Mozart to modern jazz and everything in between. This is a very informal, laid-back look at the different ways the piano has been played, I would say. I don't think it's a good place to start if you want to learn about piano or like the history of piano, because I do think it jumps around too much, but not without reason. It's because it's organized by sort of style. Chapter 3 is called The First Piano Superstar. From then on, it starts talking about pianists. Before, it's more like general piano. Then performers on the road, the combustibles, the melodists, the alchemists, I feel like if you know the main pianist, you have an inkling of who is where. He talks about both composers and pianists, of course. But if you don't know anything about piano, I don't think that will mean anything to you. I am not an expert. I don't want to make it sound like, ugh. For me, it was a treat. There was a lot that I knew, but there were also a lot of performances that I didn't know. I just loved how it interweaves things like jazz and music art, installations that use different types of piano, different types of art things that have happened. So it's not just classical, but I would say that the backbone of this is classical. And then for the 20th century, sort of the interplay between classical and jazz. I think it's really fun. I think if you love piano, you should definitely read it. The tone is great. It's very conversational, but knowledgeable. Doesn't dumb it down, but doesn't play it up either. It's just so nice. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think objectively it's like such a tight book that can work for any audience. I think it's very specific to piano lovers and addicts and people who don't know everything because it's still general public, but I think it has that sweet spot. So that was it. That was my wrap up of the Springathon 2021. I am so looking forward to next year's. Hopefully, no, I'm not going to jinx it, but I will participate. If I only read one book, which would be the general non-fiction nature writing book, I would be happy. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, if you want to read any of these books. Did you participate in Springathon? If you did, please leave me your favorite books or every book you read. I don't mind. Whatever you want to tell me, please leave it in the comments down below. I'm always happy to get comments. And yeah, like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to get more of these weird, very intense videos. And yeah, see you next time. Oh, all my social media is linked down below. Oh my god! Neighbors, that's the downside to having a ground floor apartment. My dad does. Well, it's not ground floor. I don't know, because in English people say first floor when we say second floor. Anyways, but this is like street level, but it doesn't look at the street. It's like inside. Anyways, not important. And you know, I always love when I find books that scratch that sweet spot. It's good, is what I'm saying.